everyone, and welcome to or back to my channel. I'm Jay, for those of you who are new here. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in February. February was a great reading month for me. I read 11 books, which is quite a bit more than I've been reading every month for quite some time now. I am fresh off a reading slump, so I'm really looking forward to talking about most of these. And I hope that you'll grab a beverage of your choice and join me for a little while I do. I really look forward to hearing in the comments if any of you have read these and what your opinions are. And here are mine. The first book that I finished in the month of February was The X by Frida McFadden. I was slowly wrapping up my binge of Frida McFadden and have now, after the month of February, read all of Frida McFadden's books, other than like a couple that sounded maybe non-fiction-y that are back from like the 2010s. So let's talk about The X. I gave this one 3 stars, which means that I really enjoyed it. Was it a new favorite? No. And at any point in time, did I not furiously turn the page like I would in any other Frida McFadden book? No, I absolutely did. So let's talk about The X. You know that slightly awkward but mostly harmless dynamic when your partner's ex is still kind of in the picture? Well, this isn't that. What starts off as a bit of like new relationship, jealousy, and insecurity quickly escalates into a full-blown nightmare, making one woman question if she really knows the man she's with. Like I said, I gave this one 3 stars. I never felt super connected to the story, but it was entertaining as usual with Frida McFadden's writing. Her writing style is really easy for me to read. This is a writer that I've really enjoyed reading on the Kindle leading up to bed. It's like a nice way to wind down before I'm zonking out for the night. Is this even in the top 5 of Frida McFadden's books that I've read? No, but I did still really enjoy it. This one still had some pretty good twists. I can't say that I was like blown away by them or anything, but they were, for the most part, unexpected, which says something. Do I have much more to say about this book, considering it's been over a month since I finished it and I'm already starting to forget much of it? No. So let's move on. The next book that I read in the month of February was Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This one is about 2 brothers who are still very raw from recent loss, and they're just trying to navigate life, love, their own emotions, and their relationship with each other. It's pretty quiet and introspective. It's full of those lingering moments and unspoken thoughts that Sally Rooney does so well. Whether or not that's a good thing depends on if you vibe with her writing style. I definitely did much more so in Beautiful World, Where Are You than I did this one, but I did switch over to the audiobook, and that definitely helped. You may know if you've read Sally Rooney before or have read reviews about her writing. It's unconventional. Punctuation's unconventional. Many incomplete sentences. It definitely helped to read this one in the audiobook. I think it would have driven me nuts if I'd stayed reading this physically. I did actually relate to this story quite a bit in that... Is that the baby? Hi. Oh, okay. We have our regular visitor. You wanna come say hi? It's a baby. Say hi to your friends. Oh, he was napping in the other room, but he definitely senses the camera and he does love it. Yes, it's a ham. You're here to get fur stuck to mommy's face, aren't you? Off you go. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's put ourselves back together. Okay, where was I? I related to this story a lot in that the siblings were pretty far apart in age. I believe it was about 10 years apart in age. So maturity levels definitely played a factor in the relationship between them. And my own sibling and I are 15 years apart. And what's kind of funny is that I sympathize so much with the older brother in this story, and I'm the youngest sibling. So that's kind of interesting. So the older sibling, his name is Peter, and I loved Peter. He's very flawed. They both are. All the characters in this are, except maybe one, and I won't say who because I don't want to give anything away. I did tab something in this book, and I will go ahead and read that quote for you now. And this is a quote in one of Peter's chapters, and I wanted to read it for you all because I feel like it demonstrates Sally Rooney's writing, which, while unconventional to me, is very clean anyway and beautiful. A lot of air traffic going on today, guys, so if you're hearing that, I apologize. Okay, so where did I want to start with this one? Okay. A nice evening, almost. In the dark, he lies quietly for long enough that she can pretend to be asleep. Gets up, then, to find the foil sheet of tablets in his wallet. Swallows two with a handful of water from the bathroom tap. Crying, she said to him, "I want you to remember me." Too painful to contemplate. Staring into the sun somehow. Agony, intense enough to annihilate. Even without looking, he finds it brightens. For a little while, in bed beside her again, he too feels like crying. Pointless, and anyway, he wouldn't dare. Slowing and congealing the formless language of his thoughts until released into medicated sleep. Yeah, her writing gets me right here. I cannot remember if I said what I rated this one, but I didn't rate it super high. I gave it a 3.5 stars. I really did enjoy it, but it wasn't a favorite, and there were definitely times where I had to push myself to keep going with this one. Next, I read Frida McFadden's newest book, The Crash. A snowstorm, a car crash, and a couple offering shelter. Sounds like the perfect setup for a heartwarming story, right? Without having much of a choice, our main character, Tegan, accepts help from a stranger in this one. But there's something about the house and the people inside that feels off, and the longer she stays, the more trapped she becomes, and escaping might just somehow be even more dangerous than staying. This one, as I mentioned in one of my reading vlogs, did not work for me, unfortunately. I felt like the characters were really flat. Their actions were there to propel the story forward rather than feeling organic or genuine. So I gave this one 2.5 stars simply for the fact it still kept me turning the page. I still was entertained, but a lot of times feeling that frustration that comes when the plot is propelled forward by unreasonable actions by the characters. So let's move along. The next book that I read in February was a memoir called The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. In this memoir, Sherry Frankie talks about the home she grew up in, where the rules weren't just strict, they were absolute. Her mother, Ruby Frankie, built a massive YouTube following by showcasing their family's life. But behind the curated content was a reality that no one else saw. As Ruby's parenting became more extreme, influenced by a so-called life coach, the line between discipline and abuse completely disappeared. So now, after years of silence, Sherry Frankie is speaking out about what it was really like growing up under her mother's controls, the dangers of family influencer culture, and the moment she realized she had to break free. She does specify in the book that this is her story. She's not speaking for her siblings or anyone else in the family. I found it, of course, to be riveting and just terribly sad that that was her experience. And I actually do not rate nonfiction books, but I enjoy this one as much as I could for the disturbing content. So if you're interested in her perspective, what it felt like for her growing up, I would definitely recommend checking out this book, just keeping in mind that it does discuss child abuse. So let's go ahead and move on to the next book. Surprise, surprise, it's another book by Frida McFadden. I swear there's only a couple more, and then I'm done, you guys, until her next book comes out, I believe in a couple months. I don't know. She comes out with books every few months, which, thank goodness, I love it. Okay, so let's talk about Brain Damage. This one, as I also mentioned in a recent reading vlog, is about a doctor who has a thriving career in dermatology, meets the man of her dreams, and has a life most people would envy until one night somebody puts a bullet in her head. This is not a spoiler. This is the premise of the story, and that incident is talked about on page 1, so no fears. So there are 2 timelines in this book. That timeline where she's living her best life, and the second timeline in the future where she is in a rehabilitation center recovering from this injury. in that timeline with gaps in her memory and a brain injury that won't let her move on. She finds herself having to piece together what really happened in case that person comes back to finish what they started. This book absolutely surprised me. It was so much more than a psychological thriller, and in fact, it almost didn't even read like a psychological thriller. The early timeline doesn't feel like it so much because we're just part of her day to day. She meets somebody new, they start a relationship, things go from there. And in the current timeline where she's in recovery, she has the most charming relationships with the staff, with the other patients, with learning everything from eating again to talking again. And I hate to be repetitive, but I did talk about this in a reading blog. It read a lot to me like a Catherine Center book that I read a long time ago, How to Walk Away. That one was about a woman who survived a plane crash, and then much of the book takes place in recovery. And this one read a lot like that. It has romance, it has family relationships. It has the most endearing scenes where she is surrounded by other people with brain injuries and how they all support each other in their own ways. And I just found it to be so heartwarming, charming, endearing, made me feel so much. I was shocked. I honestly felt like it read like a different author, not taking away anything from how much I enjoy her psychological thrillers, but she could totally branch out into women's fiction and romance easily. 4.5 stars. It was just shy of a 5-star. I highly recommend this one. So on to one that I didn't enjoy quite as much, The Favorites by Lane Fargo. Olympic ice dancers Kat and Heath were magnetic on the ice and messy behind the scenes. After a dramatic split that left their careers in ruins, a new documentary is determined to expose the truth. Kat's spent years avoiding it, but if the world's gonna dig through her past, then she wants to tell her own story. So in this book, we fluctuate between Kat telling her story and the documentary that is progressing in tandem. The premise sounds great. I was very excited to go into this one. And I have to say, for about the first third of the book, I was really enjoying it, and it peaked early for me. And for sure, the second half of the book is what ruined the story for me. It really lacked the character arcs that I needed to stay interested in this story. And with Kat really being so one-dimensional, only caring about ice skating, just got boring. And the plot just started to get repetitive for me. I know a lot of people enjoyed this one. I didn't hate it. I actually gave it 3 stars because the writing is good. I do like Lane Fargo's writing. I loved her book, They Never Learn, which is a thriller that I read a couple years ago or maybe a year ago. But yeah, this one didn't work for me, and it actually kind of put me off romance. I had another romance book that I was intending to read in the month of February, and I couldn't do it, guys. I just had to stay away from romance. So yeah, if you're into toxic romance and you don't mind it being pretty one-dimensional, you might really enjoy it. And that's not taking away, like sometimes we just need something that's not too complicated, right? So, and that's totally fine. Not trying to say anything bad about it. So, okay, let me rephrase that. If you enjoy toxic romance, I think actually if you liked Magnolia Parks, you might like this one. I didn't enjoy Magnolia Parks and I didn't enjoy this one. That's all I'm gonna say about it. Let's move on. Don't even. Good boy. Okay, I had to run and do something real fast, sorry. I'm gonna look completely different now. Okay, catch my breath. Okay. Second to the last Frida McFadden book, guys. The Devil Wears Scrubs. This is a book that Frida McFadden self-published. I think it was her first fiction book. I really need to do a lot more research into it, but I just kind of have a list of all her books, somewhat in chronological order. And yes, so I believe that this was her first fiction book and that she self-published it. It is described as a short comedic novel. I've said this in a reading blog. I didn't find it that short nor that comedic, but I still really liked this one. It is humorous, but I didn't have like laugh out loud moments throughout it. I think I had one and it was kind of towards the end of the book. But in this 2-book series, which I'll talk about the other book here in a bit, we follow Dr. Jane McGill when she begins her residency, and her attending that she reports to absolutely hates her and pretty much does everything to make her life miserable. So she finds herself navigating between these brutal shifts and the hospital politics. And basically she's just trying to survive it. In the midst of all this, there is a character described as the sexy surgeon, Ryan, I believe his name was. And, you know, maybe there's a fling. It's just not that big of a part of the story. So I still wouldn't categorize it as a romance. And what made this one really enjoyable for me was Frida McFadden's knowledge of the medical field, being that she is a doctor. So it felt incredibly well researched and was such a fast, fun read. It just was light and nothing too crazy happens. I think I described it as like Grey's Anatomy on a slow day, but obviously it takes place over more than a day. But yeah, I really did enjoy it. Gave this one 3¼ stars. Yes, I'm doing quarter stars. Sometimes you have to do a quarter star, you guys. Next is Delphi by Claire Pollard. This was a 3½ star for me, but I would have said in the first quarter of this book that it was gonna be like a 4 or 5 star. So it did definitely fall off for me in the second, well, really after the first third of the book. I was kind of tabbing it like crazy for me anyway, until about here. So you can see, this is the start of the book. Nothing in this part of the book really stood out to me. It's not that I didn't still enjoy much of it. I did. It was a slow read. I found that I couldn't read too much of this at a time without my mind wandering or just not being that engaged in the progression of the story or the anecdotes, anything like that. The ending really, really shocked me. I'm not sure why she felt that it needed to end the way that it did. I actually did look at reviews when I was done with this, and not many people talked about that. I think I saw maybe one review that was like, what was that ending? So I will warn you, like the ending is pretty messed up, especially for this being a fiction book and not a memoir. I did go over some of these quotes in a reading vlog, but not this one, and I'll share it with you guys. I do like to sometimes share quotes, whether I'm planning a TBR or doing a wrap up like this, because I like to give you all like a sample of the writing style. A lot of times that can, you know, be something that you connect with if it maybe doesn't sound like the plot is a book you would typically gravitate towards, but you like the writing, or vice versa. That's why I do it. And also I want to share with you guys the quotes that I felt were worth tapping. So this one is early on in the book. This is on page 12. I sip cold coffee. Click on consciousness could be a side effect of entropy, say researchers. What if disorder maximizes the brain's information content? That's the article name. Perhaps the deeper into the future we get, the more aware of it we become. Perhaps this is our curse. Recently, I've begun to fear the future. This year, I am 45, and for the last decade, I have taught classics on a part-time contract at a good university, have translated from the German some prize-winning novels, although my name is rarely mentioned in the reviews. I am, I suppose, at the peak of my career, but both my jobs feel underpaid and undervalued, reliant on me putting in wageless hours through love. It didn't used to bother me when I was young and grateful, but I'm becoming more conscious. I loved that. So yes, beginning of this book, thought it was gonna be a banger. It ended up sort of being average for me. I will read whatever comes next from this author. I'm not sure if she's come out with anything else. This is a debut. She had written some other works, but just not any other novels. So 3½ stars. Okay, so this next one I have been very eager to talk about. I wish I would have done this wrap up closer to when I finished this book, because I have this personality defect where if it's been a week since I've done something, even if it was really exciting to me, I'm kind of over it and I don't really feel as excited anymore. Okay, but let's do our best to muster the excitement for this book because it deserves it. and that is All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. I gave this book 5 stars. It's my first 5-star of 2025, and I'm pretty stingy with my 5 stars, you guys. The last book I gave 5 stars to was in April of 2024. That was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and I read an average of probably at least 8 books a month. Just to reiterate, like, I do not give out a 5-star easily. And yeah, some books just linger in your mind long after you've finished them, and this is one of them for me. Spanning decades, it follows the lives that intersect in unexpected ways and weaves together love, loss, and all the ghosts that come with those things. It's heartbreaking, it's beautiful, and like I said, the kind of story that sticks with you. I had only read the first part of the synopsis going into this book and found myself completely confused as the inciting incident happens that gets this story going back in the 70s. Like I said, it spans decades. But once I kind of understood what was going on, I could not put this book down. I had so many favorite quotes, but none of them I can share with you because they would give too much away. I, shortly after finishing this book, got an email from Book of the Month talking about their Lolly Award winner, and it went to The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, which I have yet to read. I put off reading because it sounded very similar to this book. I had this book through my library and decided to wait on that one. And The God of the Woods won the Lolly Award, so now I'm very eager to get to that book. I don't know if All the Colors of the Dark was up for that award and The God of the Woods beat it out. I have no idea, but man, this book I feel like really deserves an award. It was so good. I highly recommend reading this one. Sorry if the light's kind of going in and out. It's cloudy and then sunny and then cloudy and then sunny. Apologies, I know that can be distracting. Anywho, again, 5 stars go to All the Colors of the Dark. It was such a beautiful story. Only 2 more books and we are done. This one I won't say too much about, and that is The Devil You Know by Frida McFadden. This was the last book in Frida McFadden's backlist that I needed to read. It picks up 10 years after The Devil Wears Scrubs. It felt to me far more like a romance because we are spending so much time in a relationship rather than at the hospital. So I did find myself missing all the time spent at the hospital and all of the medical jargon and everything that I was really enjoying in the first one. Didn't so much happen in the second one. It was more relationship focused. And that's all I'll say. It's still really enjoyable. What did I give it? 3 stars. Very good read, or very entertaining read. Correction. Okay, and last, I'm finally to the last one. And that is Dearest by Jackie Walters. I almost forgot that I said I was going to read this one in February. Yeah, so new motherhood is overwhelming enough without your estranged mother showing up on your doorstep. Flora, our main character, isn't sure if she can trust her, but with her husband deployed and exhaustion setting in, she's too drained to fight. As eerie things start happening around her home and around her new baby, she has to wonder, is her mother here to help? Or is she hiding something even more terrifying? This one didn't really work for me. It started off very promising. I thought I was gonna really like this one. I love the synopsis, as much of it as I read anyway. And yeah, it got off to a good start, but at one point I was like, a lot of this I would normally really like in a story. Why am I not connecting with it? And then I realized that there was no character development, that I just really wasn't connected enough to care about these characters at all. And then as it evolves, or I could probably say devolves into what this story is about, that, I don't know, maybe it says in the synopsis. Let's take a look. Yeah, it doesn't say what ends up being the catalyst for everything, but that didn't work for me either. I was like, if I knew that that was what this book was gonna be about, I probably would have had set like more realistic expectations. But having not known that, I expected something different from this. Almost more like, I was expecting something more like The Push by Ashley Audrain, and that's definitely not what I got here. So 2.5 stars. Please let me know what you read in February, if you read any of these, what were your thoughts on them? Behind me, I have my stack of books I expect to get read in March. Looking forward to that. I hope you guys are all doing well. If you made it to this part of the video, I really thank you for watching. Take care, y'all, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.